Okay. Welcome to this special edition of GoVote Omaha, a candidate forum for Omaha Public School Board District 7, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. To give you a better sense of that district, it includes the following elementary schools: Beals, Bell Ryan, Field Club, and Jackson, and it also includes Norris Middle School. My name is Bridget Claiborne, and I'm the Vice President of the League, and I will be the moderator for this forum. The League never supports or opposes political parties or candidates, so we present this forum solely for voter education purposes. The format is as follows. Each candidate will get a 1-minute opening statement, followed by questions prepared by the League of Women Voters. Each candidate will answer every question and will have up to 90 seconds to answer. And following the questions, each candidate will then have a 2-minute closing statement. We will alternate speaking order throughout the forum. Our timekeeper is League member Kathy Bass, and she's going to signal candidates when they have 30 seconds of time remaining and when to stop speaking. And before we started the forum tonight, the candidates flipped a coin to determine the initial speaking order, and I will introduce them now in that order. We have Keegan Korf and Jane Erdenberger. We're going to start with the opening statements, and Keegan, you are starting us off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thanks for the opportunity to have this forum and just to learn a little bit about myself and about Jane. We're very excited to be here. So thank you. My name's Keegan Korf. I am in my day job, I am the director of the Metro Smart Cities Initiative for the Greater Omaha Metro region, but I am a former public schools educator. So I served the Omaha Public Schools. Specifically, I started my career as a special education paraprofessional at one of our alternative programs. I went on to teach high school English. And then finally, I eventually became a district level technology leader, supporting all 93 schools and programs in our district. And at that point, I learned so much about the school system as a whole, and really gained the skills and knowledge, especially in technology, to better inform some decision-making processes and hopefully serve our school district as an Omaha Public Schools Board of Education member.
Thanks so much, Keegan. Jane, you're up.
Hi, thank you very much for organizing this event. League of Women Voters has been educating voters since June of 1920. So it's exciting to be part of this over 100-year tradition. My name's Jane Erdenberger, and I am running for the District 7 seat. I've lived in Omaha my entire life. My husband and I raised 2 children who both graduated from high school. I had a 22-year career as a finance lawyer, and then I left Q-Tech Rock to go teach high school at North High School. And while I was teaching, I was on chaired several district-wide committees to write curriculum. And at this point, I know how to issue bonds, I know how to read contracts, I know how to manage a classroom of teenagers, and I know the perspective on the public school system in Omaha as, like I said, a lifelong resident, parent, employee, and a taxpayer. Looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you both for being here. Okay, Jane, we'll start with you for the first question, which is, could you tell us what you think the top 2 issues facing families in your district are?
Okay, sure. The top 2 issues, they kind of actually come under one major umbrella of equity, and that is that there are so many other challenges to the parents and families in my district that it has their ability to take full advantage of what is actually an equitable school system, but the learning capacity and ability to take advantage of it is very inequitably distributed. I don't have any high schools in the district. We do have J.P. Lord, which I don't think you mentioned earlier, but so most of the issues that are related to parents in my district, those schools, relate to elementary schools. I'm also very interested in making changes at the high school level to make sure that people.
Thanks so much, Jane.
Mm-hmm.
Keegan?
Yeah, absolutely. Jane's right, 100%. When I talk to the voters in our district, especially when we go around pre-COVID and we were able to knock doors and actually have those face-to-face conversations, equity is huge, and especially equity and access to technology and innovation, equity in terms of access to the best of the best in terms of educators and resources. And even within our own school district, I mean, OPS is such a large district in terms of like the geographic area that it takes up, that there are different resource needs that students and teachers have across the whole district of OPS as well. The other issue that I would say is critically important to voters in our district is access to early childhood education and programs. And that is also something that so many voters want to have conversations about. And I think that that's something that's more important probably than ever before. And definitely it's more important to them than it was for people growing up of my generation, and I'm sure generations before me as well. That access to early childhood education is such a fundamental part of a child's formative development. And we are so lucky in the Omaha Public Schools to have such great partnerships and programs that provide that type of education to students and families in our community.
Wonderful. Thanks so much to both of you. Keegan, we'll start with you for the second question.
Sure.
And you both might be aware of this, but this summer there was a group of students and alumni from Omaha Central High School that made a list of demands regarding changes to curriculum as it relates to representation and inclusion. And how, the question is, how would you respond to them and what would you propose?
Yeah, absolutely. Very well aware of that group. They call themselves What Youth Can Do, and they have been extremely engaged. I've been very impressed. As a matter of fact, I have engaged with them, and we have an event tomorrow night together. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a virtual quarantine, like teenager town hall, streaming via Facebook Live. So I have sat down with them at their meetings before, and one in the past, actually really recently, to talk a little bit more about the concerns that they have, about their demands that they have for their, not only just OPS, but now it's broadening in their larger, more Omaha Metro school districts. We had a student there from Millard Public Schools, a former Lincoln Public School student. So it's kind of interesting to watch the work that they're doing expand even larger than OPS. But yeah, they're doing really, really great work. And I think that students are the number one priority and stakeholder in our Omaha Public School District. And as a candidate and as an elected official, my intentions are to absolutely be there to support teachers, to support educators, and to support families in our community, but above all else, students are number one. So, I was a high school teacher. Jane was also a high school teacher. They are bright, intelligent, amazing kids with big, important ideas, and they need to have a voice that is listened to, and they need to have a seat at the table. So I'm on board helping them out, and I think that the work that they're doing is phenomenal.
Thanks so much, Keegan. Jane?
Actually, your question goes on. Well, actually, I was going to follow up on something Keegan said about the early learning community stuff. My husband is actually on the learning community board, so I sort of feel like between the two of us, we're prepared to cover kids from early learning all the way through high school. With respect to your question about high school, there is a distinct, and this goes back to my equity answer, there's a distinct difference between the kind of education kids are getting in school, and it starts at the early ages in terms of, how are they best able to take advantage of the education they're getting, but it's manifested at the senior high level. At North High School, we have a premier engineering program, but if you look at it, it's not a very diverse population of kids taking classes. And I think we really need to do a deep dive into figuring out how is it that, when is that divide happening? Is it something the school district is doing to the students? Does it have something to do with the students themselves? But I'm very happy that organization is working hard to raise consciousness about it. I sponsored a number of committees and student groups while I was at North, because I was there for 16 years. So I've seen a lot of kids come and go and head on to getting Gates Foundation scholarships. So I'm thrilled to be able to work with them and make sure that they're getting education.
Thank you, Jane.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with you for the next question. This is our third question. Safety is an issue in our schools, but some suggest that the presence of police officers in schools leads to the criminalization of student behavior and also targets students of color. Do you agree or disagree with this, and what are you going to do about it?
It's a really good question, and for one for which I've talked to a number of the board members and principals and counselors throughout the city, because I have been focusing on what that means. To tell you the truth, my personal experience up at North High School was that our SRO was a resource for the students, sort of an in-house lawyer about what they could do. He had excellent relationships with them. They hung out on his police car after school. So I think it's really, I mean, we can't have a blanket statement that they're good or bad. My guess is criminalization is an issue when you have them in the schools before high school, and that it just sends the wrong message to the students, parents, teachers, staff, and everybody. Once they get to high school, my experience was that they provide a sort of what you would call a community policing sort of feature, where the students actually develop a relationship with somebody on the police force. I know from personal experience that our police officers would do backflips to keep from arresting someone or giving them a record. So I've talked to board members, and the board has not done a deep dive into data on the effect of student resource officers and what the long-term implications of that. That's something I'm very aware of, but I gotta say, in my personal limited experience, it was.
Thank you, Jane. Keegan?
Yeah, so I have some similar experiences with Jane, but some differences of opinion, I think. I also was a high school teacher, but I taught at Bryan High, go Bears. And as you may or may not know, Bryan and several of our Omaha Public Schools are actually within the Bellevue city limits. And therefore, the resource officers that they have and utilize in their schools are of the Bellevue Police Department as opposed to the Omaha Police Department. So one of the demands actually of the What Youth Can Do group is to eliminate SROs from our schools, especially armed resource officers. And I would say that I have committed to supporting that demand, and I am going to continue to commit to exploring the opportunity to end our contracts with not only the Omaha Police Department, but the Bellevue Police Department in an effort of several things. First and foremost, the Omaha Police Department are primarily funded by the city budget of Omaha, but their benefits package is paid for by the school district. So those resources of the school district should be better served serving mental health purposes. And another thing is the purpose of school resource officers was after school shootings became a big deal, they were placed in our school buildings to help prevent school shootings. The data show that that's not what's happening, and it's simply perpetuating the problem. So that's my stance.
Thank you, Keegan. We'll start with you for the next question. We have 2 questions left. This one is, how do you view the decision of OPS to postpone the start of the sports season this fall?
Oh, yeah. So, and this is hard. And I also was a classroom teacher. I was a coach. I understand the value of athletics and extracurriculars, especially for so many of our students. I was one of those students when I was in high school who did not do well academically and who really, really leaned on and needed athletics and activities to be successful. I believe that Omaha Public Schools leadership and the support of the board to postpone the school year and to postpone athletics was the right decision. I know for a fact that it was a challenging decision. I know they faced a lot of political pressure to do otherwise. And now, as we're working toward a phased in approach back to that 3-2 model of getting students back in school and taking a look at what some of the other options are for a possibly postponed or delayed fall athletic season, that's where we're at. And I think it was the right move. I also know that last year our spring sports had an abrupt end to their season too, and there was no opportunity to reschedule or postpone those. So when we talk about equity, you know, we gotta kind of look at being fair across the board. And I think it's important to listen to the voices of those who think that's critical and super, super important. But I think that the leadership of OPS made the right decision by postponing the start of the school year and athletics.
Great, thank you, Keegan. Jane?
I'm going to agree completely. I think that our leadership, and specifically the superintendent, made a bold, bright, smart, and just stepped into her leadership role. I mean, she had data that nobody else had, so she had to make a decision nobody else had. With the rates of positive tests in the zip codes that are in our district, and frankly, with the size of our district, how many students we have coming and going, and just the possibility for increased infection. There was really no better way to go about it. I think it was the right thing to do. It didn't make anybody happy. And we heard from a lot of public speakers who, you know, lectured us about how, you know, students learn better in the classroom. And I know for a fact there's not a single person that gets a paycheck from OPS that doesn't know kids learn better in the classroom. So that's why it was a particularly difficult decision. I think that the data has now supported going back into the classroom on an abbreviated basis. I gotta say that the support for the teachers has been insufficient, and that's been the hardest part of it, because they've had their curriculum expectations 4 times in the last 2 months, and it's very hard for them to be able to provide the quality education that we all want to. Keegan was in the classroom for 3 years. I was for 16. We know what it takes.
Thank you, Jane.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to move into the last question. Jane, we'll start with you for this one.
Okay.
Do you feel that the pension issues in OPS have been properly addressed, and what would you do about the pension fund going forward?
Okay, at this point, I've actually done a very deep dive into that and met with most of the members on the OSHA board. There were a lot of bad decisions. Nothing to do them. Nobody was criminal or even criminally negative. So it just is what it is. All of the investment decisions are now being made at the state level. That's out of our hands. And all of the decisions about distribution are statutory. So none of those contract provisions can be changed. What they're focusing on right now is moving the administration of the pension plan down to Lincoln, which frankly is probably not cost effective. It's going to cost between $4 and $6 million to do that. And that money is probably better spent putting into the pension fund itself. But I know that the OSHA people are working on being able to sort those funds out. Right now, they're working on coming up with a composite solution that involves OPS making the contributions they should have been making all along, and some of the newer teachers not getting the same pension benefits that the existing teachers retired. Even so, it'll take 17 years to bring us back to fully.
Thanks, Jane.
Mm-hmm.
Keegan?
Yeah, this is one that it's hard to start, and most of what Jane said, I'm spot on. I definitely agree with. The way that OPS is in the position to handle the situation now is they're doing the best that they can with what they have. No one who is in a current leadership position or sitting on that board of education, this crisis is to no fault of anybody who's in charge right now. And so, they kind of got handed this huge challenge to solve. And here we are dealing with the consequences of it. And I'm talking to the tune of budget cuts of $30 million a year for at least the last 4 that I can count on one hand. So those budget cuts impacted my department when I was working in the technology department directly. We saw you know, colleagues getting cut left and right to be able to make those ARC payments. So now, like Jane said, they're working on trying to determine whether or not to transition the OSERS fund, or the Omaha School Retirement System, to NAPERS, the Nebraska Public Retirement System. And I think the exploration of that is a positive thing. I think it's important that they probably do so. There will be some significant technology costs to transition that administration up front, but in the long haul, it's all going to even out. And frankly, in the long haul is kind of what we're going for. I'd rather see OPS in a positive situation 25 years down the line than where we're at right now. And that's what the position of a board is, to help support, try to build that foundation for the future, to really make sure we've got people in really good hands.
Thanks so much, Keegan. That's all of our questions for tonight. So we're going to move into closing statements, and Jane, we'll start with you. Just a reminder, you each have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for putting this together. It's been really useful to sort out my own thoughts and hopefully to express them to the people that are interested in being educated. Thank you. I am dedicated to education. I can prove it because I left an incredibly lucrative legal career that I had been in for 22 years to go teach high school. And I was there for a very long time, became very involved in leadership of the OEA, the teachers union, which has endorsed me, and different organizations at the school and at the TAC building, with most of the writing. So this, as far as I'm concerned, is a bizarre extension of my existing experience and all the things I really know well. OPS is at a critical crossroads. You mentioned the pension fund. The money that is being paid into the pension fund was required to have been paid all along, and it wasn't. The budget cuts that Keegan's talking about are not necessarily a product of the situation that we ended up in, but we are in this situation. So that's one area. The other is the equity issue and how we make sure, because that's highlighted by this COVID distance learning, how do we best address making sure that each student can take full advantage of what is a treasure of school. I am retired and I intend to do this full time. This is going to be my job. I can put 8 to 12 hours a day into this, and I know that I'm fully capable of anything that the school board or the issues can be thrown at me. So I am very much looking forward to representing my district and all of the stakeholders to maintain the Omaha Public Schools as one of the best and largest schools in the country. So I'm excited. Thank you very much again. That was great.
Thank you so much, Jane. Keegan?
Yeah. I just want to start by, again, saying thank you so much for the platform and being able to have an opportunity to talk with you and answer these questions, and to be able to share a conversation with Jane too. I always say that the voters of OPS Subdistrict 8 or Subdistrict 7, excuse me, have a very hard challenge ahead of them, because I believe that Jane and I are both really, really great candidates, and it's a good problem to have. So I want to definitely reiterate how important to me that the health and safety and well-being of our students, and not our students, but also our staff is, and that's part of my platform. When I said that I wanted the resources being spent on school resource officers to be better allocated toward mental health resources, I meant that full and wholeheartedly. Our students deserve to have opportunities to feel like they're in a safe and welcome school environment. And they also do deserve to have those relationships that they built with the adults in the room. I don't believe that SROs are necessarily the most important adult. The unarmed security officers are the ones that I see walking around with the students, having really positive relationships. And I think that that's a really big push for me. So I want to make sure that kids' voices are heard, that the students have a seat at the table, and that's huge too. I also want to emphasize that as a technologist, that is a huge, huge part of my platform. We have spent so much time, and when I worked at the district level in OPS, we spent so much time working to move up to be in a one-to-one technology environment. We finally got there because we had to get there. I want to make sure that we stay there and that we have the resources we need built into the budget year after year to continue upgrading our technology and innovation so that we can be competitive leaders in the Omaha area with our surrounding serving school districts, because our kids deserve that opportunity. So above all else, really, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. And I really hope to have the opportunity to serve you on the Omaha Public Schools Board of Education. It would be an honor.
Thanks so much, Keegan. Everyone, this concludes our forum for the Omaha Public School Board District 7. The League wants to thank both of the candidates for participating. And from the League of Women Voters, again, my name is Bridget, and I'm reminding you to inform yourself about the issues here in our city and where the candidates stand, and make sure you get out there and vote. You have to get your mail-in ballot back to the Election Commission before November 3rd. And we have a lot of information on our social media about where those drop boxes are if you don't want to put it into the mail. But remember, just go vote Omaha. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
ladies. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good weekend.